Welcome to Magnify Your Message. Inspiration magnified.
Just don't ever underestimate how much of an impact integrating your children's lives with nature or with animals can really make.
Buckle up, because today's guest is the incredible Mary Rottschafer, a woman who didn't just dream about making a difference. She turned her backyard into a life-changing experience for thousands. Mary is the visionary behind the Critter Barn, an educational farm that started with just a few animals gifted by her church choir. Now it's a hands-on haven where people of all ages and abilities reconnect with nature and learn about animals and themselves in a truly unique way. I cannot wait for you to hear all about her story and her journey. Let's dive in. You are going to have your heart warmed today by our interview with Mary Rottschafer. Mary, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Cheryl.
Tell us, who are you and how do you serve the world?
Well, I started out as a fourth grade teacher and then a mom and a musician. And some folks who were friends in my choir decided that when we moved to a little farmstead, that they should have a party. And they came out early and painted this large barn that was on this property that we had just bought, and it needed a little sprucing up. And then after a meal, they did a comedy show. Of course, these are choir people, they're creative people. And they did a skit about me being pregnant. And the punchline was, Mary had a little lamb. And after that, there was a joke contest, and the winner got pig in the blankets. And literally 2 50-pound feeder piglets came squealing out of the curtain, and they were being held by a couple of guys from the choir, wrapped in blankets, pink and yellow blankets. And it was just a fun thing. The kids' choir sang Old MacDonald, and the next morning we had this little farm collection running around in our garage because the barn had been cleaned out. Didn't know the first thing about caring for animals, but I was a nature buff, a science enthusiast, loved teaching that to my fourth graders. So it fit, and we had 3 children under the age of 4 at that time. So for the next few years, we sort of established a hobby farm, and over time would invite friends, my children's preschool friends, whatever, church friends. Of course, they monitored how it all was going. But we had a sheep, some goats, chickens, ducks, geese, you name it, some pigs. It grew into a hobby farm. And 6 years later, friends in education started to approach me about doing school field trips. And my first husband was a superb teacher and brought his 6th graders out to the farm. And one day the kindergarten teachers in his building were jealous, and they said, "Can you put a field trip together for us? We're going to come." And after that experience, an administrator from that school system, it was a suburb of Grand Rapids, so it was representing like almost a dozen elementary buildings. They wanted to bring all the kindergarten children out to the farm. I had no idea what was happening, and it just grew from there. So since 1990, the Critter Barn has served children for school field trips, and then it grew into classes. And then it grew into a traveling farm that would go to other destinations. And then we became mindful how beneficial the farm was therapeutically to many children, and I'll say adults too. And we started a program for children who had special needs and adults. And then we found that kids just wanted to keep coming. So we created a class whereby it was a prerequisite for volunteering. And to this day, the Critter Crew volunteer program is the backbone of our programs because it allows children to continue to grow. And some would come weekly, literally, to volunteer after taking this prerequisite class till they were like 15, 16 years old. Then they became employees. There's actually several of them on staff now, and it's just grown into a volunteer program that includes the community and persons with special needs, as well as the kids who take that particular class. It's just blessing a lot of people, and we're all busy doing the farming thing and taking care of our God-given resources and enjoying the animals. And yeah, it just keeps growing, Cheryl. So that's what happened to this musician and fourth grade teacher. I became a
Mary,
farmer.
it's so inspiring. So you're saying some of the kids who came as children, they became the volunteers and they've gone on to continue to volunteer and be staff members now?
Yes,
What a
yes.
legacy.
Megan McManus, Zach DeMole. I mean, there's quite a list. Taylor Mewson. I mean, so I could name quite a few. And there are others who, because they were given kind of like a hierarchy, hierarchical structure, is that a word? We created different levels in our volunteer program. So older children were assisting younger children. And many of those kids became teachers, elementary teachers, because they found a passion of teaching as they were assisting. They loved the farm, but they were excited to do that for a career. So that's pretty exciting. And there's a gentleman on my board right now who is a first generation dairy farmer in Michigan. And his inspiration was when he was a little guy at the Critter Barn. And I only found out about that in February after he joined our board, because he's just such a on fire guy. He's got 6 kids. His business is great. He's been a little innovative because the dairy industry is a tough one. They haven't had a lot of good profitable years. And yet we all want our milk and our ice cream, so they keep going. But yeah, Paul was joining our board, and the inspiration he revealed to me one night after a board meeting. You realize, he says, this all started when I was a kid and came in kindergarten to the Critter Barn. And he told me a very specific story that I remembered happened with our donkey, Jake. And it was him. And it's just a blessing to see all the people whose lives have been shaped through their experiences at this farm.
It truly is a blessing. I was fortunate to grow up on a ranch with many animals, but as I've grown up and over the decades seen those who've never gotten to meet any animals firsthand, and the calming effect, the therapeutic effect, the centering, grounding effect that animals can have on people. And there's, fortunately, we're discussing mental health issues these days, and they've become more destigmatized. I don't want to say fully destigmatized. There still is some stigma there, but people are more open to discussing it. What kind of impact is this making on people's health and well-being, particularly their mental health?
I wish I had statistics. I know what I've observed. Some of the most beautiful experiences are when the children, who I'll call normal, if there is such a thing as a normal kid, the kids that take the volunteer class and come back to volunteer, they love the farm. And they probably are the best role models for working alongside of people who have a disability or who are maybe lagging cognitively a little, or whatever their disability. We have quite a ministry to that group. So whether you are a person who is stressed by just life or by economics or whatever, and you come to the Critter Barn for an experience, what I call the normal kids, we all have enough stress in our life that getting quiet, getting off the cell phones, getting away from the screens, and just having that one-on-one interaction with an animal that is calm, he's been socialized. You don't have to worry about getting scratched or bit. That's not even an issue. But to just spend that quality time. Cheryl, one of my favorite images in my mind is on the heels of COVID. We are still all wearing our masks and going around. I have a picture of a gentleman, a dad, who's literally down on his knees. So he is eye to eye with a rabbit that is on a table. And he's petting that rabbit, and his profile, he's got his mask on, and he's just down on his knees petting that rabbit. I dare say that man was there for 5-6 minutes. And I cannot read his mind, but I have always felt that that was his moment of just a respite, healing. I don't know what was going through his mind, but he stayed there for a reason. Yes. I have a person who's a board member now who was involved in a rather visible job. So most people in the public sector didn't know her pain. But she called one day because I'd been to her for publicity moments and so on, and for the Critter Barn. And she called me one day and just asked if she could come and spend some time in our rabbit room. I says, of course. And it was maybe a summer day that she thought maybe we wouldn't even be open. But anyway, she came. And she's a delightful person, and she spent a lot of time with the rabbits and told me stories and so on. And then she came back again, and we started to get to know each other, and then she got really involved. There was a time when we had a lunch, and she explained that that was about the time that she had had a late-term miscarriage. And she used our farm as her place to just go and breathe. She just needed to be private. Like I said, she has a very public role, and it's just a beautiful memory. Animals make a difference. You can take the walk on the beach, you can take the walk in the woods, but if you can interact with a live animal, I think it's a triple blessing. So I have found that beautiful purpose for our farm. There's so many stories I could tell. There's a young man who had a disability that really restrained his speech. He has an 18th chromosome, and we have a video of him that his mom captured. She went to get him, and we said, oh, he's still down in the front pasture with the sheep. And we have the video of him and a sheep named Blue, and he's verbalizing to Blue about his 18th chromosome because his parents knew about it, and he felt that they would make he and the sheep okay. That lamb is about 7 months old at the time, walked with a severe limp. It had a bad shoulder when it was born, and I took it from a friend as a bottle lamb, and we named him Blue because he's a blue-faced Leicester, and we don't have any of those at our farm. So he's a one up, and she caught her son interacting and talking to that lamb. And it was one of the few times to that point that they had heard their son articulate things with words. And it was because of the animal. You know, it's just, there's so many places in life where you just like to surround kids with some of these loving animals to just help heal and give them some positivity, and animals return affection. And I don't think that's hokey, but I think it's mutual. They enjoy the attention from us and they give it back, and it's unconditional,
yes.
Which is true. And that's all because they're an extension of creation, God's creation, doing their thing, blessing us. So
it feels like there are so few places we can be in life and out in the world and be able to let our hair down in a judgment-free location where we're not expected to do anything, be anyone. The animals, like you said, completely unconditional, accepting, loving.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. And people say, but you raise them on a farm. How can you do that? And I struggle with that myself, because farms raise animals so that they lay eggs, so that they give their milk, so that they contribute their wool. But there are some animals that are all in. And, but I also say, so is the carrot out of the ground and the apple off the tree. Once you take it and harvest it, no, it's not going to live anymore, but it's the world that we have been given to sustain a global population. So I wrestle with that. And I think that's one thing that we've learned how to really communicate with children as they start to discover that reality in life that some animals are all in. I know that there's, I think it's one of the gymnasts from Russia. I have a quote on my wall about how the chicken contributes, but the pig is invested. You know, it's that total giving of yourself so that something else can live. And yet I teach children, in order for something to live, something else dies. And whether it's a vegetable or, you know, that's even the plan of the world. There is a sacrifice made for eternal life too, right? And so it's kind of like the way the world goes. So that part is hard, but we do talk about it, and I'd rather be there with young people and work it through with them when they come to that realization that some of the animals go to market. But then my theory is, if they're going to give the ultimate sacrifice so that we can have food, then they deserve the best doggone life that we can give them while they're here on this earth. And so that's our mantra, our kind of our baseline for excellent care, give them the best food, the best care, best attention, so that their life is a joyful one, a healthy one, a happy one. Oh, lots of stuff on a farm to deal with.
And
So,
those complexities, life is complex. The decisions we make are not always simple, like you talked about being invested
yes,
for the pig, but kids are going to learn these things. The environment in which they learn, I think, matters,
yes,
doesn't it?
yes,
To
absolutely.
to be able to provide that hard truth
Mhm.
inside of a loving environment, boy, that's a gift, a service that you provide.
Mm. Thank you.
So since 1990, you've been providing this. How many children and families, I mean, to even fathom
Yeah.
the impact that this makes, it's hard to even fathom. I mean, there's this old saying and truth about, if we just help one, we have
Yes.
done our job in this life. And yet you are helping countless people and generations of people.
Mm.
What's next?
Oh. Well, some interesting things have happened, just like the farm had, it's called the Critter Barn, had an unsuspecting start, right? I was not like planning to do this. It just happened. And then you just make the most out of it. And affirmations came um, inside of my mind and heart, as well as from people who were enjoying the farm and asking for more. Um, I was listing in my mind all the different little farms that have sprung up that I've had an opportunity to impact. But probably the most amazing situation was that there's a group of people in the Fort Worth, Texas area who had been involved in children in urban neighborhoods where things weren't so great, both providing medical care and an educational program for kindergarten through 5th grade. And so over about 10, 12 years, they established a school. One of the members is a physician. He actually set us practice in the area. Another coordinated improving houses and even buildings for small homes. They have 125 children, kindergarten through 5th grade, in their school, and it's all scholarshiped. So the participants are just blessed, and they work with those families, and they were trying to change things around a little bit. There's a lot of crime, a lot of drugs in the neighborhood. So as the story goes, of about 10, 12 years ago, there was a point of exasperation when the medical doctor made a phone call to his dad and said, if I could just get these kids out of the city, like take them to a farm and live there for a year, just show them a different side of life. And so the dad goes, well, why don't we build a farm? So they bought a golf course, and they had some funds from some oil money, and they decided that they were going to develop this property. And I don't know, one of the people in a greater group that was aware that this was going on came to Michigan, where I live, came to visit family. And they said, oh, while you're here, Auntie, we have to take you to see this cute little farm, the Critter Barn. So this is about 10, 12 years ago. And unbeknownst to me, she's on the phone talking to her husband, who then came up to visit the farm and see for himself. And then he approached me and said, I've got some people down in Fort Worth that would like to copy this model. We think this is what we need to do. And they were particularly looking at our volunteer program, because that's how you engage kids in long-term involvement. So they flew me down here. They flew up there. We've met umpteen times, and it started to escalate about 3 years ago. And then they started to build, and I helped them with their site plans. Our Critter Barn moved from our original location recently to 36 acres. And many of the floor plans have been shared with the folks in Texas. I've been down there. My board of directors is like, well, why not? It's not like people are ever going to have a conflict of where to go because it's so far apart. So anyway, they opened up their doors on March 2, and Wally and I have actually moved down here now to Fort Worth. My farm has a fantastic new executive director. He has been working with us for 15 years, so he knows our farm and our culture. Like I said, there's several employees, Kaylee, Megan, Michaela, kids who have grown up at our farm who are full-time staff there now. And although I'd like to be there, I really haven't taught there since Christmas time. They're all doing it. That's both a bittersweet and a very successful feeling that it gives me, but everybody goes through transitions. We decided this group down here could use a little help and a little support. So we've transitioned down here. So when you ask what's next, I'm starting over. I'm 72 years old, and we're starting over. We're full of energy, full of ideas. We have a lot of experience, and we're just trying to help these folks find their way, which I'd have to say on their own, they're doing fantastic by themselves. But in the area of animal husbandry, ideas of how to integrate the animals with activities for the kids, starting a dairy herd with goats, and also a little heifer, a little cow down the line. Those are ways that we're going to help here and start another adventure. I'm still a board member as the founder of the Critter Barn, and I'll be going back up there for an October 12 ribbon cutting of our latest barn that was built on the property. I still talk to Tony, the executive director, every week. Even though we're down here, we've started our meetings over the long distance, and I couldn't be happier. It's just such a wonderful cause, and to see kids down here and even the staff fired up, excited, not even half knowing all what's possible. It's just another chapter in the journey, and it was nothing that we sought out. It just providentially happened. So we really feel led to do this.
Mary, it's so just divinely blessed, it seems.
Thank you.
And what I'm wondering is, okay, so there's Fort Worth, they're quite spread out, and our listeners may be from all over the country or world. What can people do to integrate some of these benefits in being with animals into their lives even if they don't have pets, even if they're nowhere near you in Fort Worth?
Mhm. We're hoping to be able to share stories through our website, whether it be podcasts or some kind of a blog. I think that exists already for the Critter Barn, but I'm not involved in that one. But I think using technology, we can share, but that's not the same as holding a little chick or a duckling. And I know not everybody is going to be set up to raise some chickens or have a bunny rabbit or, have a cat. I guess I would encourage any parent to try to find ways to connect their child with the environment or with nature in some way, shape, or form. Find out what farms are in the outlying areas in your area, or even reach out to the Critter Barn or to Timberview Farmstead and ask questions, begin a dialogue with us. We have people scattered around the country. I have a friend in Maryland. I mean, the list goes on, where there are people doing wonderful things in other places. If that's not an area that you're super familiar with, I would definitely reach out to either one of these two farms, which you can post our contact information, Cheryl. We'd be happy to offer some suggestions because we know a lot of folks around the country. And I think right now the backyard farm is fast growing. I think hobbyists, people that want to grow the little vegetable garden or have a flock of chickens, we seem to see a lot of that developing right now. You might be surprised who you could find within a 5 or 10 mile radius of where you live. Otherwise, I'd encourage anybody to get something that their child can raise at their house and learn about daily care. Taking care of another living thing is an awesome responsibility, right on down to the last day, sticking it out till death do you part, and that little animal passes on, because generally humans live longer than our pets, and that's the only downside, is I wish they would live forever.
Mary, I will include your websites and all that contact information, but for those just listening, where is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Sure. Me personally, I have an email that they're welcome to use. It's the Critter Barn's email, mary@critterbarn.org. I'm now down in Fort Worth, and it's Timberview Farmstead, so you can certainly put the address in, and we'd love to have people reach out and visit us here, take a drive out to the farm. Tony up at the Critter Barn, tremendous resource, and if you post that, if folks show up at the farm and say they saw this on the podcast here that you're going to have, I think they'd be delighted to host anyone with a little special tour and hear their story and how this might have impacted them. But yeah, to reach out to us, I think would be the two farms, or to email me, and I'd be happy to chat with anyone further. And then just simply to encourage people to go to a zoo, to go to a area farm. There's more of that around, I think, if we do a little digging. Yeah, I was just in Connecticut, and we did some farm tours over a Sunday with my grandchildren. And I was amazed how many public farms were opening their doors. In Michigan, there's an organization called Michigan Agritourism. And I think lots of farms that maybe have a specific focus, like an apple orchard, or they're growing lavender. A lot of those kinds of farms have open hours, especially during their busy season. And that would be something else that people could look at. And I know that Farm Bureau on a national scale does not necessarily provide places to go, but every state will have farms listed. So if you call your county farm bureau or your county extension service, they should be able to provide farms where you and your family can go for U-Pick or for other experiences, like a hayride or a sleigh ride, or go pick a Christmas tree. There's so many types of farms. So tourist organizations, Farm Bureau, your extension office, county extension. I think those could also be resources for people in their own area.
Mary, you're such a wealth of resources. Thank you. And I'll make sure all of that is listed in the liner notes of the episode. What would you like to leave us with finally today?
Something that happened this past year. So there's a young man named Brody, and Brody was third, fourth grade. His friends were taking critter camp. Brody couldn't take critter camp. He had to wait. He was dealing with cancer. And 2 years later, he came to the critter barn and became a volunteer, took the class, loved it, loved it. In fact, it was literally turning his life around. This past winter, when we were looking for the story to put in our newsletter, I learned about Brody's journey a little bit more. And I called his parents and they said, he's probably at the point where he could talk about it. So we featured him in our news article about how he had to wait 2 extra years to finally take the critter camp class and become a volunteer. And now he is on fire. He is there consistently, and his parents drive from Spring Lake to Zeeland, where in our Michigan neck of the woods, it's about a 35-40-minute drive, so that he can volunteer for his 3 hours. Well, then Tony, our new executive director, started a 4-H program this summer. And of course, Brody was one of the 22 kids who are on the first team of the Critter Barn to go to the local fair. It just shows you what perseverance does, and how watching that little guy come in heavy-hearted, turning his life around into just every day is a joyful day. And he tells his teacher he has to do well in school so he can go to the Critter Barn to volunteer. The Critter Barn has become his inspiration for living well. And he's just an inspiration to everybody around him, and he is so joyful. So I guess just don't ever underestimate how much of an impact integrating your children's lives with nature or with animals can really make, and something that's going to stay with this young boy for his life. So there's a lot of tangents that come from it. It's just all good. It's positive. And they also learn to work and be responsible. So I think engaging with nature, with caring for life other than your own, and also understanding just how God made this beautiful world to sustain us all if we use our resources properly. What a great way to live and enrich one's life. I guess Brody's just a great example.
He's a great example, as are you. Inspiration for living well. God bless you. Thank you for sharing your mission and your heart with us today. It makes a difference, young or old alike. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Cheryl.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode of Magnify Your Message. Wow, what an inspiring conversation. I hope you found Mary's work and her story as inspirational as I have. To learn more about Mary, just click the links in the episode notes for more. I'm Cheryl Hunter. Join us next time on Magnify Your Message. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and share this episode with everyone that you feel it would benefit. Thank you in advance. And when you're ready to share your story and your work with the world, I can help. Visit CherylHunter.com to learn how. I am Cheryl Hunter, and until next time, know that your message has the power to change the world.